Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. A warm welcome to all the devotees for Raman Kendra Delhi's Sunday Satsang with Raghavji. Before we commence the Satsang, I shall now request Mr. N.G. Krishnan at the shrine to initiate with puja. Sir, over to you.
Okay, start.
वंदे राजो वर्णो त्रिवंदेवो बृहस्पतिः त्रिवंद इन्द्रश्चाग्निश्चराष्ट्रन्धारयतां ध्रुवं देवीं वाजमनयन्तदेवाः तान् विश्वरूपा पशवो वदन्ति सा नो मन्द्रे मूर्जन्तुहानां तैर्वां कस्मानु सुस्थितैदु पर्वतैवा विशालिः इन्द्रैवेहवत्त्वष्टः इह राष्ट्रमुदारय अभिदिष्टभृत्यन्यतः अधिरेशन्तु शत्रवः इन्द्र इव वृत्रः दृष्टः सुमुहूर्तोऽस्तु सुप्रीडमस्तु विद्यास्महव्ये नमसो वसत्य मित्रं देवं मित्रतेऽन्नोऽस्तु अनुराधान् वहिषा वर्धयन्तः शरञ्जीवेम शरदशवीराः दीर्घायुष्यमस्तु। हरिः ओम्। आगमार्थं तु देवानां गमनार्थं तु रक्षसां गञ्चारवं घनिं जातु देवदाह्वनकारणं दानं समर्पयामि। कलशस्यां कैविष्णुः कण्ठे रुद्रसमासिता मूले तत्र चितो ब्रह्मा मध्ये मातृगणासिता चक्षु दुस्सागरा सर्वे सप्तद्वीपा सुन्दरा ऋग्वेदोदयजुर्वेदः सामवेद तर्वणः अग्गैश्च सहिता सर्वे कलशाम्बुसमाश्रिता गङ्गे च यमुने चैव गोदावरी सरस्वती नर्मदे सिन्धु कावेरी जलेऽस्मिन् सन्निधिं कुरु आयान्तु देवपूजार्थं सूरिदक्षयकारः पूजाकरणानि प्रोक्ष्य आत्मानं च प्रोक्ष्य आब्रह्मलोकात् आलोकात् आदेशात् आलोकात् लोकपर्वतात् निवसन्ति विजादेवा तेभ्यो नित्यं नमो नमः। ॐ क्लां भरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नशान्तये। ॐ भूः ॐ भुवः ॐ सुवः ॐ महः ॐ जनः ॐ तपः ॐ सत्यम् ॐ सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ओमापः रोदीरसः मृदं ब्रह्म भूर्भुवस्सुरो मोपात्रसमस्त वृक्षयद्वारा श्रीपरमेश्वर प्रीत्यर्थं तदेव रत्नं रुदिनं तदेव लक्ष्मीपतेः अङ्गुलीगं स्मरामि करिष्यमाणस्य कर्मणः निर्विघ्नेन परिसमाप्त्यर्थम् आदौ श्रीमहागणपतिपूजां करिष्ये। अबौपस्पृश्य गणानान्त्वा गणपतिं स्वामहे कविं कवीनाम् उपवस्त्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पदान् शृण्वन् बोधिभिः सेदसाधनम् अस्मिन् हरिद्राबम्बे सुमुखं महागणपतिं ध्यायामि। श्रीमहागणपतिम् आवाहयामि। श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। आसनार्थम् अक्षतान् समर्पयामि। पादयोः पाद्यं समर्पयामि। अर्घ्यं समर्पयामि। आचमनीयं समर्पयामि। मधुवर्गं समर्पयामि। स्नापयामि। स्नानानन्तरम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि। वस्त्रोत्तरीयत्यार्थम् अक्षतान् समर्पयामि। उपवीतं समर्पयामि। दिव्यपरिमलगन्धान् धारयामि। हरिद्राचूर्णं कुङ्कुमं समर्पयामि। शोभन अक्षतान् समर्पयामि। पुष्पमालां समर्पयामि। पुष्पैः पूजयामि। ॐ सुमुखाय नमः। ॐ एकदन्ताय नमः। ॐ कपिलाय नमः। ॐ गजगन्नकाय नमः। ॐ लम्बोदराय नमः। ॐ विकटाय नमः। ॐ विघ्नराजाय नमः ॐ गणाधिपाय नमः ॐ धूमकेतवे नमः ॐ गणाध्यक्षाय नमः ॐ वक्रतुण्डाय नमः शूर्पकर्णाय नमः हेरम्बाय नमः ॐ स्कन्दपूर्वजाय नमः ॐ गणाध्यज्ञाय नमः ॐ गणपतये नमः ॐ हेरम्बाय नमः ॐ धरणीधराय नमः ॐ महागणपतये नमः ॐ लक्ष्यप्रदाय नमः ॐ क्षिप्रप्रसादधा नमः ॐ अमोघसिद्धये नमः ॐ अमृताय नमः ॐ मन्द्राय नमः ॐ चिन्तामणये नमः ॐ निधये नमः ॐ सुमङ्गलाय नमः ॐ बीजाय नमः ॐ आशापूर्गाय नमः ॐ वरदाय नमः ॐ शिवाय नमः ॐ काश्यपाय नमः ॐ नन्दनाय नमः ॐ आशासिद्धाय नमः ॐ दुण्डीनादाय नमः नानाविध परिमल पत्रपुष्पाणि समर्पयामि ॐ उपदीपार्थं चदान समर्पयामि ॐ धूपदीपार्थम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि समस्त उपचारपूजां समर्पयामि ॐ बाणाय स्वाहा ॐ ध्यानाय स्वाहा ॐ धानाय स्वाहा ॐ ध्यानाय स्वाहा ॐ समानाय स्वाहा ॐ ब्रह्मणे स्वाहा मृदाभिधान्वसि ये मध्ये मृतपानीयं समर्पयामि मृदं भवतु वस्तरणमसि कदलीफलं निवेदयामि निवेदानन्तरम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि तत्पुरुषाय विद्महे वक्रतुण्डाय धीमहि तन्नो दन्तिः प्रचोदयात् ॐ महागणपतये नमः कर्पूरनीराजनं सन्दर्शयामि नीराजनम् आचमनीयं समर्पयामि ॐ नमो व्रतपदये नमो गणपतये नमो प्रबोधपदये नमस्ते अस्तु लम्बोदराय एकदन्ताय विघ्नविनाशिने शिवसुराय श्रीवरदमूर्तये नमो नमः मन्त्रपुष्पं समर्पयामि वर्णपुष्पं समर्पयामि समस्त उपचारान् समर्पयामि वक्रतुण्ड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा अविघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा ॐ विघ्नेश्वराय नमः शोभनार्थे क्षेमाय पुनरागमनाय च तदास्थानं प्रतिष्ठापयामि शोभनार्थे क्षेमाय पुनरागमनाय च ॐ क्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं वशुवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये ॐ भूः ॐ भुवः स्वः ॐ महः ॐ जनः तपः ॐ सत्यम् ॐ सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि यो यो नः चोदयात् ओमापः ओदीशः मृतं ब्रह्म भूर्भुवस्सुरो मोपात्त समस्त उदक्षयद्वारा श्रीपरमेश्वर प्रीत्यर्थं शुभे शोभने मुहूर्ते अद्य ब्रह्मणः द्वितीयपराब्धे श्वेतवराह कल्पे वैवस्वत मन्वन्तरे अष्टाविंशतितमे कलियुगे प्रथमे पादे जम्बूद्वीपे भारतवर्षे भरतखण्डे मेरोः दक्षिणे पार्श्वे शकाब्दे अस्मिन् वर्तमाने प्रभवादि षष्टिः संवत्सराणां मध्ये विन्ध्यस्य उत्तरे आर्यावर्त एकदेशे इन्द्रप्रस्थ महाक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे दक्षिणवाहिन्याः यमुनायाः पश्चिमे तीरे विक्रमशक बौद्ध अवतारे बाह्यस्पत्यमानेन प्रमादीनां षष्ट्याः संवत्सराणां मध्ये पिङ्गलनाम संवत्सरे सौरचान्द्रमानाभ्यां शोभकृतिनाम संवत्सरे उत्तरायणे शिशिरतो कृष्णपक्षे कुम्भमासेः प्रथमायाम् उपरि द्वितीयायां पतितौ भानुवासरयुक्तायां पूरनक्षत्रयुक्तायां विष्णुयोग विष्णुकर्ण एवं गुण विशेषण वसिष्ठायाम् अध्यां तमानायां पुण्यद्रौ श्रीपरमेश्वरप्रीत्यर्थम् शुभयोग शुभकर्ण सकलविशेषण श्रेष्ठायाम् अस्यां नमोपात्त समस्त ऋतक्षयद्वारा श्रीपरमेश्वरप्रीत्यर्थम् अस्माकं सहकुटुम्बानां क्षेमस्थैर्य वीर्यविजय आयुरारोग्य ऐश्वर्याणाम् अभिवृद्ध्यर्थं समस्त दुरिलोपशान्त्यर्थं यावच्छक्ति ध्यानावहनादि षोडशपूजां करिष्ये। विशेषतः श्रीरमणमहर्षिभ्याम् अष्टोत्तर शतनामावली जपञ्च एवं अक्षरमणमालां पारायणं च अद्य करिष्ये। ॐ अपार सुखभारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहागिदं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्तावहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। ॐ महासेन महोंशेन जाताय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः। ॐ श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्ड संविदाहाराय नमः। ॐ महोजसे नमः। ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः। ॐ जगद्हिताधाराय नमः। ॐ भूमिनाथस्थलोद्दिदाय नमः। ॐ पराशर पुरोत्तंसाय नमः। ॐ सुन्दर्यादव फलाय नमः। ॐ गमनीय तुषारित्राय नमः। ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः। ॐ सोनाचल महोलीन मानसाय नमः। ॐ स्वर्णहस्ताय नमः। ॐ श्रीमद्वादशान्त महास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्ति निबाधेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दु मौलिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितूरासोद सोमशैल प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ दासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाकृतये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्प संरम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ शिराय नमः। ॐ तपक्षिपिज सर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ पुल्लाम्बुज विलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासदास श्रीमण्डितानन मण्डलाय नमः। ॐ सूतवाड्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ सूटिरागिल विभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्त तद्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मन्त्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणादिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्ष गुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजताकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्त नयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ ऋषिदासल ताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्यनिवाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईक्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ निजमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमिताविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ सोना पद्माशल ऋग्बोध स्कंदाश्रम निकेतनाय नमः। ओम सद्दर्शनोपदेष्टे नमः। ओम सद्भक्त वृंद परिवृताय नमः। ओम गणेश मुनिभृंगेन सेविदांस गिरि सरोरुहाय नमः। ओम गीतोपदेश सारादि प्रसन्तं चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ओम वर्णाश्रव अदादीताय नमः। ओम रसज्ञाय नमः। ओम सौम्याय नमः। ओम आत्मवदे नमः। ओम गर्वाभ नमस्तानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ओम सर्व सद्गुणिने नमः। ओम आत्मारामाय नमः। ओम महाभागाय नमः। ओम मातृविनायदाय नमः। ओम विनुदाय नमः। ओम विनुदाय नमः। ओम विप्राय नमः। ओम मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ओम भावगोज्वलाय नमः। ओम दर्शनादग संहारिणे नमः। ओम मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ओम कृच्छान्ति करसान्निध्याय नमः। ओम स्मरणाबन्धमोचकाय नमः। ओम अन्तस्थिर षण्डांशवे नमः। ओम संसार्णवधारकाय नमः। ओम सोनात्रिष्टु तिष्ठ्रेष्ठे नमः। ओम आर्धविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ओम विद्युद प्रियप्रज्ञाय नमः। ओम नैसर्गिक महातपसे नमः। ओम कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ओम सुप्रगौबीन वसनाय नमः। ओम गुहाय नमः। ओम दण्डबाणये नमः। ओम कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ओम भवरोग विषग्वराय नमः। ओम स्कन्दाय नमः। ओम देवमादाय नमः। ओम अमर्त्याय नमः। ओम सेनान्ये नमः। ओम पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम। We are now going to say Upadeshasaram, page number 46 in Tamil and 90 in Sanskrit. तुराज्ञया प्राप्यते फलं कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडं कृतिमहोददौ पतनकारणं फलमशाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं देशयाकृतं चित्तचोदकं मुक्तिसाधकं कायवाङ्मनः कार्यमुत्तमं पूजनं जप चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगतैषधी युक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिभृत् देवपूजनम् उत्तमस्तवात् उच्चमन्ततः सिद्धजं जप ज्ञानमुत्तमम् आज्यधारयः षोडशासमं सरलचिन्तनं विरलदः परं वेदभावनात् सोऽहमित्यसो भावनामिदा भावनीमदा भावशून्यसत् भावसुस्थितिः भावनाबला भक्तिरुत्तमा वत्सले मनः स्वस्थता क्रिया भक्तियोगभो आशनिश्चितं वायुरोदना दीयते मनः जालभक्षिवत् रोदसाधनं चित्तवायव चित्क्रियायुता शाखयोद्वयी मूलगा लयविनाशने उभयरोधने लयगदम्बुन भवति नो मृदम् प्राणबन्धना लीनमानसम् एकचिन्तना नाशमेद्यतः नष्टमानसोत्कृष्टयोगिनः कृच्छमस्त्रिगिम् स्वस्थितं यतः दृश्यवारिदं चित्तमात्मनः चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे हृदे नैव मानसं मार्गार्जवात् वृद्ध्यहस्वहं वृद्धिमाश्रिता वृद्धयो मनो विद्यहं मनः अहमयं गुरो भवति चिन्वतः ऐवदत्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशपात् अहमहं तया पुरधिहृत्स्वयं परमपूर्णसत् इदमहं पतः अभिज्ञमन्वहम् त्रिमीनगे यलय सद्धया विग्रहेन्द्रिया प्राणदीतमः नागमेघस तज्जडं ह्यस सत्त्ववासिगा चित्तवेदरा सद्दयादिति चिन्तया वयम् ईशजीवयो वेषदीपिता स्वात्मदर्शनम् ईशदर्शनम् स्वात्मरूपतः आत्मसंस्थितिः स्वात्मदर्शनम् आत्मनिर्भया आत्मनिष्ठता ज्ञानवर्धिता अज्ञानहीन चेत् ज्ञानमस्ति किं ज्ञातुमन्तरम् किं स्वरूपमे आत्मदर्शने अव्यया भवा अपूर्णचित्सुखम् बन्धमुक्त्यदी तं परं सुखम् विन्ददीहगी वस्तुदैविकः अममेदगम् निजविबानगम् महतिदं तपो रमणवागियम् अहमभेदगम् निजविबानगम् महतिदं तपो रमणवागियम् अहमभेदगम् निजविबानगम् महतिदं तपो रमणवागियम्.
Namo Ramana. A very warm welcome to all the devotees for Raman Kendra Delhi's Sunday Satsang with Raghavji. This evening, Raghavji shall be speaking to us on the earliest set of instructions given by Bhagavan in his own handwriting condensed in the form of Vicharasangra or self-inquiry as preserved by Gambhiran Sishaya. This consists of a series of questions posed by the devotee between 1900 and 1902 and handwritten answers by Bhagavan himself. The topics include both the core practice of self-inquiry as well as practices supportive or helpful for self-inquiry. Raghavji does not need any further introduction from me as he has been very kindly addressing all the devotees for over the last 2.5, 3 years. Um, for any new devotee, a very quick background of Raghavji that he is a devotee of Bhagwan Sri Raman Maharishi with a background of Vedanta study under various acharyas of Rishikesh and Uttarkashi over several years. After completing a degree in technology in 1993 and a few years of research in electronics, he was drawn to the exclusive pursuit of the path of self-inquiry. Raghavji shares his knowledge and guidance from Bhagwan with devotees of Raman Kendra Delhi every fourth Sunday of the month. I shall now request Raghavji to take off. Sir.
Namaste. Namaste and welcome. Am I audible, Anuragji?
Yes, sir.
अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशेः यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं रमणं गवीरं चिन्ताविहीनं त्रिचिन्तयामि ॐ ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय Dakshinamurthaye Namaha. We were looking at these precious questions of Bhagavan, which he himself has handwritten and conveyed through Sri Gambhiram Seshaya to all of us devotees. And we were recapitulating some of the earlier questions of these 42 questions. So we'll just go along with that flow. A few questions which we had seen, we'll recapitulate that and then pick up the thread of where we were, which was the 30th question. So in the 10th question, Bhagavan goes on to say that if the entire universe is of the form of the mind, then does it not follow that the universe is an illusion? And then why is there so much creation mentioned in the Vedas? So it's like a popular question, really, that so much of talk of creation and Ishvara and the deities and the different worlds and rebirth, so many questions are presented in the Shastra. And what is the purpose of all of that if all of this is said to be ultimately not very real? It's not absolutely real, as is the assertion of the teachers and our gurus. And Bhagavan clarifies that all this is required as an anuvada, as a restatement of what is being felt by a student. In other words, all the Shastras, all the gurus, even when they say, okay, let's go along with the mindset of the student, and then they will talk of creation. They will talk of different lokas and so on. Because abruptly, if the teachers talk of the Paramartha Vastu, which is there is no creation, there is no birth, that you are never born, never do you die. Time itself is mithya, or it is within consciousness. Just another concept you use to order your experiences. And what are those experiences are nothing but just non-dual consciousness. In this way, if it is talked of upfront, then the student is left hanging. He has several questions which he is proceeding from a certain framework, that this creation seems real. Of course, I'm ready to question that, but it still seems real. And so the teachers, including the Vedas and even Bhagavan, come down to the level of the student and talk of all these different ideas and concepts of creation, of reincarnation, and so on. And so it's not to say these are absolutely true, or that you have to really dwell on all the details of reincarnation, for example. A very popular topic. They call it regression, past life regression. And really, that is highly irrelevant and not very helpful, except perhaps as a kind of uh, comforting thought that yes, there is a past life and there will be a future life, which is correct. Nothing wrong with that idea as such. But the details of those past lives are not really relevant. It's enough to say consciousness is never created nor destroyed. It follows reincarnation is a reasonable theory. We cannot prove it, but it's a very reasonable theory. Just as we say matter cannot be created or destroyed, or energy, matter energy are regarded as now one entity in two different ways of manifestation. And even so, consciousness, when it is expressed too, cannot be created or destroyed. Makes sense. As a reasonable initial concept, it's very reasonable. And yet, if that very consciousness is further understood, analyzed, and looked at with great intimacy, with great clarity, it is seen to be non-dual. It cannot come and go. No deti na ustameti, says Asi Adi Shankara. Doesn't rise and doesn't set. Consciousness is all that there is. That is the Paramartha or the absolute standpoint. But then here, as the questioner says, why is creation mentioned in the Veda? So Bhagavan says that it is only to show that all this is ultimately not different from consciousness, not different from that non-dual reality. And so we don't really need to bother about all the details of creation. It's more a creative pursuit, perhaps, of knowledge, but it doesn't address the root human issue of dukkha, of sorrow, of suffering. So that is not going to be addressed by getting into the details of creation. Sure, we just need to have a basic framework to keep our mind at rest. That yes, there are these different lifetimes we go through, evolving towards clarity, self-knowledge. That's fine. And so Bhagavan goes on to say that for the less qualified persons, which means most of us, creation is taught. And that is the phased evolution of Prakriti. Phased means stage by stage. The way you might talk of, the Big Bang, and then something happened, then the galaxies came, and the planets came. So physics also talks of phased evolution. Even Shastra has many corresponding theories. Akasha tad Brahmana Akasha Sambhutaha. From that Brahman, space was created or manifested. Then from space, Akasha Vayuhu, the uh, Vayu Tattva, the air element was created, and so on. So there's a sequential creation mentioned, which is again very reasonable in itself. It can stand it in good stead to explain many of the phenomena which are of the conscious realm. But then, such as mind, what is mind, and so on, all these questions never need this kind of creation model, which the Vedas do teach. Having said that, this is not the last word of the Veda because, as Bhagavan says, for the more qualified, what is taught is not the sequential creation that, okay, initially something was there, then something else happened, then something else happened. Nothing actually happened. For the more qualified, simultaneous creation is taught. That is, that this world arose like a dream on account of one's thoughts induced by the defect of ajnana. So, how does a dream arise? Is it like in the dream as you sleep, first space and time are created, and then different worlds come, and then you are going into a world in the dream. Then you encounter others in the dream mountains, the dream trees. Do they come one after the other in any sequence, be it logical or not? No, it is simultaneous. All of it just comes presto, like a Mayavi. You are the Mayavi of your dream. Everything just comes in an instant. They are not really traceable sequentially. That analogy is used to assimilate the last word on creation. That all that you see now is ultimately a simultaneous creation, another model. Remember, it's not wrong to say there was sequential creation, there were worlds, and we go through many lifetimes. That's fine as far as it goes. Nothing particularly wrong with that. At the same time, when we inquire deeper into this very idea of all these different things, we find that creation never actually happened. You cannot account for it in any logical way. It's like consciousness is in the present moment, and suddenly all this is there. I am there, the body, and the world outside. It's a sudden, instantaneous superimposition of all this. That's very mind boggling, but that is called simultaneous creation. Yugapad Srishti, as it's called. The first one is called Krama Srishti. In the Shastra, Krama means sequential evolution. So Bhagavan uses the word phased evolution of Prakriti, Mahat, Tanmatras. This is phased evolution. But Bhagavan nudges us towards the Yugapad Srishti. Yugapad means simultaneous creation of time, space, and all this. Because what matters is here and now, I am in virtually what can be called a mess. For lack of a better word, I am caught in this uh, cage of time, space, body, and then my roles and responsibilities. It is overwhelming and there is distress. So, how does it matter, phased or otherwise? I need freedom, I need relief. And so, Bhagavan very graciously tells us, excuse me, Bhagavan very graciously tells us that this Yugapad Srishti is more meaningful. It is to draw our mind away from getting preoccupied with all the details of this creation. And it's very interesting in its own way. There are 14 worlds, say the Vedas. And it's so beautiful in a way that we evolve through our lifetimes, through many different embodiments or bodies to move towards greater and greater clarity. And if a person has a lot of right karmas in this life, he goes to a higher world where there is more of sattva, where there is more of clarity. And if the person has more of adharmic actions or actions which are more of the nature of negativity, then he regresses. A person can go down that ladder of evolution. So, like this, there is a certain rhythm, and it's good to know that as well because the mind will ask questions. And it is good to get the first level answers to all these questions. After that, at some point, we say, what's this all about? Why are all these questions coming? What is time, space? What is consciousness? So we have to jump the gun. At some point, we have to say, hey, mind, you're just asking questions because that's how you continue your game. That's how the mind continues its game of thinking of something or the other and keeping its interest in creation going. So Bhagavan would often push people to ask, who is asking these questions? What am I? If you don't know that I, how can you even answer all these questions conclusively? So at some point, you have to make that jump. But sure, first level, there are answers. Like I said, that there is some sequential creation, there is an intelligent creator who is all pervading, and you are subject to the laws of karma and so on. First level answers, once you got them, better to move towards jnanam, self-knowledge, and bhakti relating to Ishvara. These two are not really getting into the details of creation. Remember, whenever your mind feels connected to Bhagavan as a guru, as a jnani, as Ishvara, that's perfectly fine. That duality is helpful duality. The duality there need not be suppressed or looked at in a negative way because it is quickly leading you away from getting absorbed and over interested in this creation towards the essence that needs to be known. That Yugapat Srishti is what it all is about. Consciousness alone arose like a dream, and this world arose like a dream on account of one's thoughts, says Bhagavan. And so, in various different ways, the Vedas describe this very Srishti only to direct us towards the source. The cause of Srishti is Aham, I, consciousness, the truth of it. That is the cause. And once one understands and knows that, no more do we need to know any of the details. We feel no interest at all. Sri Ramakrishna used to quote one Bengali saying, Ravana cried and Behula cried. Some villager named Behula started crying, oh, Ravana has died in Lanka in Ramayana. Irrelevant, utterly inconsequential. Such is most of the emoting and thought processes of the mind. Something happens and a person gets affected. And so ultimately, that lack of connection between what I am emoting and thinking about and the reality that has to dawn on us. Otherwise, there's no solution. Within this dualistic realm, there is always enough to complain about. The only, therefore, refuge is to relate to Bhagavan saying, okay, enough. I can't make sense of this mad creation. This is a mad dance of all kinds of things going on, and I don't even know what the mind is. Bhagavan, I take refuge in thee. I take refuge in you. That is the spirit in which you chant, let's say, a mantra or any kind of uh, practice of bhakti, in whichever way you're attracted to. Extremely helpful because all duality is now collapsed into just two, you and Bhagavan. You need to only deal with one entity, Ishvara. If you're angry, okay, fine, emote towards Ishvara. That is also a way of bhakti. Why Ishvara is this happening? Keep thinking of Ishvara with some pain, be it, with some passion, be it. It's okay. But that Ishvara, the one who is all this, is the one occupying our heart and mind. Very helpful there. And so, therefore, this creation of the Vedas is only a stage to get you out of the involvement in thinking about the universe, says Bhagavan. And then the questioner goes on to ask 10 and 11. We are just reviewing, and we'll go to the where we left the thread of our discussion. The 11th question, Bhagavan says, the disciple asks, is self-experience possible for the mind whose nature is constant change? Another popular question. So the consciousness is infinite, limitless, and the mind is limited. Can the mind really experience consciousness? Sometimes they frame it this way. Well, the answer is consciousness is already being experienced 24/7. There is no new experience of consciousness or Brahman or Nirguna Tattvam, which is the truth. So there's no need for a new experience. However, what is required is to see that the mind is free of wrong notions. Constantly maintaining a wrong notion. It's so subtle, we don't even know it. That there is a continuous wrong idea being maintained by our mind. So if we even quieten the mind, that wrong notion will have less of an effect. That's why people feel relaxed and peaceful when a mind is quietened. Because those wrong notions, the avidya doesn't much show up. Doesn't mean it's not there, but at least it's a very important step. That when the mind quietens itself through your will, of course, through your practices, through your choices, you're very close to the truth because the mind is no longer entertaining these wrong notions in the form of, oh, I am small, oh, the world is fearsome, what will happen to me, oh, what happened in the past. So all these preoccupations are all the expressions of that avidya. So the first step is we cannot attack that avidya directly. So we just observe what is happening in the mind. Just quieten the mind using the breath, be it using any mantra or just noticing what is happening to your body and mind. Different methods you use, come back to yourself, setting aside all the other notions and preoccupations. So even that quietness of mind makes the mind come back to its nature as sattva. So mind is, they say, created from the sattva element of the cosmos. So when you quieten the mind is resuming its natural nature, its natural spirit of sattva. So Bhagavan here says, since sattva guna is the nature of mind, and since the mind is pure and undefiled like either means space, what is called mind is in truth of the nature of jnanam itself. So when the mind is pure, it is very close to its nature as knowledge or consciousness, which is the highest truth itself. It's only the erroneous knowledge, that is the wrong notions, which I said, which mistakes one for the other, that is called mind. So when you think so many thoughts, quieten the thoughts, you're already 50% of the way to self knowledge. From there, that higher understanding dawns by the power of Bhagavan's words, by the power of the Shastra Pramanam, by the power of one's own close attention. So all of these together, of course, takes you further there. But then we are not looking at that last stage. Instead, quietening the mind makes the mind resume its natural condition of being pure, undefiled by the wrong notions. Sri Ramakrishna used to give an example. If an elephant is taken to a bathe in the river, temporarily it is pure. At that point, if you quickly take it back to the stable, it will remain clean, the elephant. But if you leave it to play in near the river, it will again put mud and all the dirt on its body. It is said it's for a very healthy reason to keep away the insects. So there is some reason there, but nevertheless, the idea is if the elephant of the mind is given a bath and the mahout quickly takes it from the river directly into the stables, it's very clean. No mud, none of the dirt and all will be there. Even so, if the mind is temporarily quietened and then we stay there, that's like the elephant coming back to the stable, that's fine. You're almost there. That's very fertile for the arising of knowledge. So when it stays in that natural, that is pure state, it's not even called mind. It's only by courtesy we say mind. When the mind is free of all these erroneous notions, it's just jnanam alone, jnapti swarupam, as Shankara calls it. And so, what was originally the pure sattva mind of the nature of pure knowledge forgets its knowledge nature, means it's jnapti swarupam, on account of avidya. And that's how all the tamoguna comes. The meaning of all this is that if we adopt any method to temporarily quieten the mind, quieten the thoughts, reduce even the number of thoughts, that itself is extremely helpful. And it's helpful because very often people ask the question, how do I do self inquiry? It seems so abstract. Let's assume a person has the question. If somebody doesn't have the question, okay, fine, good, God bless him, that's excellent. But if, let's say, somebody has a question, how do I start with self inquiry? What does it mean? Well, a useful stepping stone is the moment a person sits, there is so much of preoccupation. Use a little breath observation, use even mind observation to just step back and reduce the velocity of those thoughts. Using breath and pranayama, therefore, is very helpful. The alternate nostril breathing kind of methods, or even just allowing the breath to just slow down itself is very helpful to do what Bhagavan has mentioned here, that when the mind is pure and undefiled, in other words, when all these erroneous notions don't yet arise, it resumes its pure nature, which is why, people, when they are relatively quiet, they feel, wow, this is so beautiful. I would want to be like this in this quiet state of mind, peaceful state of mind, because it's of the nature of joy. Peace is a neutral word, but when the mind has this peace, as we call it, meaning less number of thoughts, there is joy. So that connection we figure out, we appreciate, and we learn to own up that connection. Otherwise, okay, mind is peaceful, so what? I want to be happy, people might say, correct? So instead, here Bhagavan is pointing out that when the mind is peaceful, relatively less thoughts, emotions, worrying about past, future, hurt, and guilt, these kind of things are a little less. There's a lot of joy. There is immense joy in merely quietening the mind, even short of self knowledge for that matter. So that's what Bhagavan is saying that. And that mind for sure can reflect self knowledge. To get a little ahead of the story, there's a mental mode. We call it the Brahmakara Vritti. So that quiet mind, when the very words of Bhagavan are recollected, when Bhagavan says, the self alone is all this, in so many ways he says, the self alone is real. So these kind of words start making 100% sense in that quieter state of mind. So that's the Nididhyasanam, as it's called. In Bhagavan's terminology, we can say the core of self inquiry is that's when it happens. Mind is quietened using any other methods, mantra, or even just observing the mind and thoughts. And then in that quiet state of mind, something mysterious happens, says Bhagavan. Some higher reality, as it were, takes over. Okay, that is in response to the very teaching that has happened before. That goes without saying. Bhagavan is hand holding the person there. So he may not mention it that, yes, it is the Guru's grace which is working there, but that is very well elaborated in Shastra, that the Guru's words really have the opportunity to destroy the avidya when the mind is quiet. So that's why these two stages are important: quietening of the mind and arising of knowledge. These two stages are what make for the whole path of self inquiry. So these are the questions 10 and 11. Now we will resume our thread and then keep revising some of the earlier questions, because always there's a saying, Pavana Punyena Shravanam Kuryat. So we keep listening and revisiting what we have heard. The second time we hear something, a little extra clarity comes. And the third time, yes, something more. In this way, a few times more, and we are very clear this is what Bhagavan is saying. It resonates with our understanding as well. So repeated listening, dwelling on the words of a Mahatma, of a great Jnani like Bhagavan, itself is a Nididhyasanam. Nididhyasana means maintaining a current of thought directed towards truth, directed towards what is. So that is Nididhyasanam. And so dwelling on the words of Bhagavan repeatedly is itself meditation, Nididhyasanam, we could say. So in the question 30, just before there was an Upodghata or a little a the last part of the previous question, question 29, which we will read here. And Bhagavan says, in the city with 9 gates, which is the body, the wise one resides at ease. So Navadvare Pure Dehi Naiva Kurvanna Karayan, as the Bhagavad Gita says, that you are the one dwelling in the body. Why in the body? Because you are available for experience in the body. That general intuitive feeling of being in the body, be it heart or head. For now, we are not making too much of a distinction there. You are available in the body. Naiva Kurvanna Karayan, says the Gita. In other words, this idea that I am doing is so burdensome, that I am the Karta is so burdensome. Most people, if you really ask them, why do you feel stressed out? The answer is not the job. It is the feeling I am the doer, that I am carrying this huge burden on me. And it's to be empathized with. We're not dismissing that. But the thing there is that kartrutvam. What is kartrutvam? The sense of doership is the stress creating factor. That I take upon myself doership for things that I don't control. I take upon myself doership, responsibility for things I don't control. Like, let's say someone says, oh my God, the sun is rising in the east tomorrow. Oh my God, the sun will come and rise, and maybe it, is falling on these plants which I want to have in the shade. I can't fight with the sun for rising in the east. Sure, I can do a little bit of something else maybe. But when I start worrying, taking responsibility for things that I cannot change, that's the source of stress. That's the source of the repeated neurotic thinking. I go on worrying, and that sense of acceptance and surrender is alone going to give us relief from that kartrutvam. Sense of doership Over mostly things we cannot change. The few things that I can change, yes, we pray to Bhagavan for clarity. When I get that clarity, this is what I have the role, the responsibility to change. I need to change that as well. But more often than not, we err on the other side. We err by taking on more than we can chew. We think we are responsible for a large number of things we are really not responsible for. It's not our take, it's not our calling, but we are not able to see that clearly. And so Bhagavan here goes on to say that the wise one resides at ease. The ease is what is important. There is no kartritvam, there is no sense of doership. Therefore, there's an ease, there's a spontaneity in their actions. They don't have to sit in the sense of physically sit. Krishna, who quotes this shloka in the Gita, is not sitting. He's driving a chariot in the battlefield. In a way, it's a come down for him, a great prince. If it was not a king, being a Yadava, they had a certain restraint. They could never be kings, apparently, but they were equivalent to kings. And then Krishna was riding a chariot. It's like a millionaire being a chauffeur of his friend who's another millionaire, let's say. So he was chauffeuring a car, not the chariot. No ego there. There is no sense of, being slighted by being asked to ride a chariot. Look at the beauty of Krishna's role there in the Bhagavad Gita. He has no hesitation in just being a chauffeur. He's just totally spontaneous. At ease, he does what he has to do. And then the body is the temple, says Bhagavan. The jiva is God or Shiva. If one worships him with the I am he thought, the Soham thought, one will gain release. It's a very famous shloka, some of you may be familiar. It's good to remember this if you can. Deho devalaya proktaha, jivo deva sanatanaha, tyajed ajnana nirmalyam, soham bhavena pujayet. So it's a metaphor for what is the reality of you. You are the Deva, the luminous one. Deva means Jyotanavan Devaha. You are the luminous one who is indwelling, who is available, expressing in the body, which is like the house. Devo, Deho, Devalaya Proktaha. Jivo Devaha Sanatanaha. You, the individual conscious being, the Jiva, are like the god of this temple called the body. So it's a kind of call not to disrespect the body, not to abuse the body, care for it. Even as we care for a temple, we protect it from invaders. If they destroy it, we again rebuild it. We do not, take it lying down. So we have that sense of pride in maintaining a temple and a tradition. So even so, the body is cared for with all the respect. It is a gift from Ishvara. So there is no body denial. There is no kind of shame about the body. Having said that, the important one is the Jivaha. He is the God, the entity who is enshrined in the Deha, in the body. And Jivo Deva Sanatanaha. That Jiva is in reality the Sanatana Deva. Sanatana means one who always exists. Sada is the word, right? Sada means always. So in Hindi, we say Sada, Hamesha. And that Sada is always there, of the nature of always being. That is Sanatana. And that is that consciousness which doesn't ever die. Consciousness cannot die. If we try to imagine our own non existence, see what happens. I try to imagine I don't exist. I'm still there to make the visualization. I might visualize my physical body's non-existence, but I still am there. Maybe like incorporeal spirit or something looking at the whole show from above, like a drone shot. So I still have to be there. So I cannot negate consciousness ever. I can never visualize my own non-existence. So that's why it is sanatanaha. Consciousness, that is the essence of the jivaha, is sanatanaha. And tyajed ajnana nirmalyam. So the key, or what is incumbent on each one of us, is to work towards getting rid of these wrong thinking patterns. I told you, right? Wrong thinking patterns. I am the doer. I am carrying the weight of the whole world on my shoulders. World means my world out there, not the 7 billion people, but the 7 people more likely who are the world for me. So I'm carrying the weight of them on my shoulders. I'm responsible for all of their actions. Illusion, false. I'm not responsible for anyone else's actions. I can facilitate everyone to find some, let us say, clarity, but I am not responsible. That doership first goes away. Then only I get clarity. This is what I should do. So first, get rid of the wrong sense of responsibility. Then you get clarity about the right sense of responsibility. Okay, this is what Ishvara, the cosmic intelligence, has destined I should be doing. That's the next step. But having said that, therefore, the Tyajed Ajnana Nirmalyam, that avidya is to be addressed. Addressed meaning removed. All those wrong notions are seen as wrong. Once I see something is false, I naturally drop it. I don't have to do anything more to remove it. If I'm having a wrong belief, the moment I see it as false, I drop it. Take the example of someone has a lot of belief in some, let's say, guru. And then he says, oh my God, that guru, it turns out that he was not really a guru. He doesn't merit the word guru. He was ingenuine. He was problematic. He was not honest in his conduct. So he has seen the truth of that. Will he continue to, go after them and worship them and so on? Obviously not. The very seeing of the truth is enough to make one drop all these wrong notions. So therefore, Tyajed Ajnana Nirmalyam. Nirmalyam is just as in a temple, you remove all the flowers. In the morning, the first thing you do before you do the worship, you remove the old offerings and the flowers. That's called Nirmalyam. So, and you Tyajed, you remove all of that. Even so, may you remove all the Ajnana, which is like Nirmalyam. It has done its job. It had its place. All so-called avidya had its place. It has led you to this point, all said and done. So you respected the body, you maybe were fussing about it. Okay, so be it. In the past, it had its role in your life journey. So you don't condemn yourself even for your avidya. It was like maybe a protective cocoon, like a butterfly, a caterpillar needs a cocoon. That is like its avidya, if you like. So initially it protects it, brings it to a point where he can break out of it and become a butterfly. So this avidya too is like nirmalyam. It has some kind of function, all right. It had, but now it's about time. Once you come to the Guru, to Advaita, to the Sadguru, Bhagavan, and to the Guru Parampara, that's it. You no longer need to hold on to these other wrong ideas, including pampering the mind, body. None of that is no longer really important. You respect it, you care for it to the extent required to subserve your purpose, meaning to the extent you need to practice your self-inquiry, sadhana, and so on. And so therefore, once that a nirmalyam is removed, all the old flowers are removed, soham bhavena pujayet. So that means I do worship by the very meditation on the true nature of myself, that I am is limitless consciousness. That very meditation, it can be either a conscious entertaining of the thought, soham, or to go even higher, it is called nididhyasanam, or Bhagavan calls it krit samstiti, hridi samstitihi. It is abiding in the heart, as Bhagavan puts it. That is effortlessly remaining as the pure self, not even using the thought soham. But initially you use that, all right, but then it does its job. It's like you hit a gong. There's a big bell, and you hit the bell. Hum. So hum. That's initially required. After that, you don't have to keep striking the bell. The bell will resonate for a long time. That's nididhyasanam. Effortlessly, you abide as a self. Yeah, initially you give a little push. You have to sit at least. You have to orient yourself to self-inquiry. You have to orient yourself to avoiding thinking of what am I going to do tomorrow, yesterday, and all that. So no doubt you would prepare yourself to do this very precious self-inquiry. But the core of self-inquiry, soham, I am pure awareness. I am a devotee. First you say I am a devotee. And what is the truth of the devotee? That I am pure awareness, not defiled by what I have gone through in the past. No place for guilt. The beauty of self-knowledge, it frees you 100% from guilt. All actions are placed, offered, Brahmani Adhaya, as is said elsewhere. You offer unto Ishvara what belongs to him. As the saying goes, you offer unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Even so, all the things you think you did is all part of Ishvara. Ishvara playing with Ishvara, and you were the witness. So in this way, it's a very powerful meditation, not meant for those who are not yet there, or they are maybe dishonest, they may fool themselves, but sure, it cannot be also denied that I am not the doer. No place for guilt and no place for hurt as well, the other side of the coin. If I feel someone has hurt me, that is also part of the avidya. In fact, The person who has hurt me has served a purpose by directing me to that part of me which is still vulnerable, hurtable. That is the avidya part. Because that means I have invested some false emotions in some part of me, and somebody is attacking that. So all hurt and all guilt is based on wrong notions. Very mercilessly, the acharyas say at some point you have to make that jump. Otherwise, I can keep doing marham patti, as they call it, a certain temporary palliative care for the guilt and the hurt won't work. At some point, those who come to Bhagavan, for example, we realize we make the jump to devotion and to knowledge. So this is the beautiful the verse explained here. Dehaha deho devalaya prokto jivo devaha sanatanaha त्यजेद अज्ञान निर्माल्यम soham bhavena pujayet. It's a beautiful verse Bhagavan has quoted here. It's given in one of the tantras, the Kularnava Tantra, and a variation of it is also given in the Maitreyi Upanishad of the Samaveda. So it's very authentic. And Bhagavan goes on to a little bit elaborate that the body, which consists of the 5 sheaths, is like the cave. The supreme that resides there is the Lord of the cave. Thus the scriptures declare. So there are mention of what are known as the Panchakoshas. So Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. Don't worry about the words. All it means is that every moment you are functioning at 5 levels in this world. Through the physical body, I eat food, I touch, I see, or just you are moving the body, you are doing things. That is Annamaya Kosha. Then Pranamaya, there is breathing happening. There is all the physiological functions of the body, the digestion, circulation, all very intelligent physiological processes. That's also you. That's not apart from you. Your physiology is a certain dimension of what you are. And then there is the Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha are just the simple thoughts and the sensory experiences. They're not very deep or they're not the essence of what you are, but just the simple thoughts where they're just kind of going here and there. You're weighing various options, as they call it, Sankalpa Vikalpatmika Manaha, Atmakam Manaha. So you're trying to see various options, the mind undecided, simple sensations. I see red color, I see trees, and so on. That's called Manomaya, just simple thoughts. Then there are deeper thoughts, which are called Vijnanamaya. They are deeper vrittis where you decide, you conclude, you reach decisions and you reach certain decisive categorical knowledge of various things, your deepest beliefs. That's part of the Vijnanamaya Kosha that defines you even more deeply. If you change your Vijnanamaya Kosha, through how do you change that? By the way, you change it when you allow Bhagavan's teaching to come into your life. When you allow the teachings of Advaita to seep in, you don't resist it, you're changing the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is your deepest like definition, your footprint. It's like your DNA. DNA defines you. DNA defines the Annamaya Kosha. So the Vijnanamaya Kosha is like a changeable DNA which really defines you at the deepest level. You can strand by strand change that DNA by allowing the teaching of Bhagavan to seep in, to enter. You do that by listening, constantly dwelling upon it. And the biggest challenge, you try to push it in your conduct. Wherever you see your conduct not in alignment with what Bhagavan says, in your understanding, you align it. You draw back. You stop doing things that you see are not in alignment with Bhagavan. You stop giving more energy to thoughts which you feel are not in alignment with Bhagavan's teaching of Advaita. So it's a slow process. Like they say, if I have to transform a cotton cloth into a silk or a cloth, how do I do that? It's just a story. But how do I transform a cotton cloth into a silk cloth? Well, the story goes strand by strand. There are some 100 count cotton cloth. Strand by strand, I replace it by silk. At the end, I have a silk cloth. Even so, all these deepest Vijnanamaya Kosha aspects of your personality is manifest every moment to moment. What are your interests in life? Vijnanamaya Kosha. What are you spending your entire day on? Vijnanamaya Kosha. What are your priorities? Vijnanamaya Kosha. What do you regard as real important for you? Vijnanamaya Kosha. So all of those things you slowly work strand by strand and slowly aligning with the teaching of Bhagavan, teaching of Advaita. And it's definitely a doable process. It's a deterministic end. It's not a never ending kind of a process. It will end. There are only so many strands. Good for you. Your Vijnanamaya Kosha is finite. There are only a limited number of things that you need to change within your thinking and emoting patterns. It's not infinite, problems that I have. Good for you. And that's where maybe your limited nature is to your advantage. If I was an unlimited jiva, then I have unlimited problems. So luckily, we are limited. And so therefore, the things that you need to change in yourself also limited. Typically, there will be hardly 4 or 5 habitual patterns which keep repeating. I need to just work on that. And you're already on the way to immense peace and clarity. So the body, which consists of the 5 koshas, the fourth one is the fourth one is called the Vijnanamaya kosha anyway, and the supreme that resides there is the Lord of the cave. So even higher than the Vijnanamaya kosha is the Anandamaya kosha, which is just witnessing what is. So this is not the topic here, so I'm just briefly explaining it. And you can just remember this, that all these 5 koshas are 5 layers of your personality, from the physical body to the breathing and the physiology to superficial thoughts and to your deepest beliefs and conclusions, to just being a witness. You're the witness of what is, not reacting to what is. You have that capacity. That's very relaxing. If you come back to that, you discover infinite relaxation amidst any kind of stress, that you can be a witness. You have the capacity to drop free will. That's the greatest exercise of free will, Anandamaya Kosha. Okay. When you drop free will itself, you are coming to the Anandamaya Kosha, just kind of highlighting that, being there. It's always there, but you're highlighting that. So when you're just a witness, very helpful. In Bhagavan, when he says, as the thoughts come, inquire who or what am I. That's again Anandamaya Kosha. You're going, moving towards Anandamaya Kosha when that's happening. When you just say who or what am I, turn back from the thoughts. Don't get involved in feeding the thoughts with all your other thoughts. And then what happens? The thoughts lose momentum. You become just the witness, pure Anandamaya Kosha. And then still higher is Hrit Samstitihi, Hridi Samstitihi, or what Bhagavan calls the Aham Spurana arises, meaning just become effortlessly abiding as pure awareness. What is a sign that you are there? Well, you won't want to discontinue that condition or meditation. Let's say if you talk about this as something that is a matter for meditation, because it's something that can be continued in all stages and roles in your life, but more of that later. For now, let's take a stand. Okay, only in meditation, I practice self inquiry. Well, then what happens? You can just allow the mind to quieten down and just remain as pure awareness. Whenever a disturbing thought comes, label it. This is a disturbing thought. Who or what am I? The witness. So just keep turning your attention back to the witness rather than building stories based on the thoughts which are arising. All that is therefore moving towards that supreme that resides there, who is the Lord of the caves, says Bhagavan. Thus the scriptures declare. Again, Bhagavan uh, indicates his emphatic alignment with the Shastra. Since the self is the reality of all the gods. So here the question arises. People talk of many deities, many gods, we meditate on God and so on. Well, what about that? Isn't that higher? That's the question. Nothing wrong with that. But is it higher than this? Here I'm just staying with the conscious truth or with consciousness. So isn't that higher? You're meditating on some deities and so on. Well, Bhagavan says the self is the reality of all the gods. And the meditation on the self, which is oneself, is the greatest of all meditations. So you don't have to despair or have any doubts whatever. Anything that you get from any of the other meditations, they are implicitly available. They will be present in this meditation. Whatever I need for my peace and happiness will come. If you want to look at it, so let us say like a matlab ka admi, well then meditation on the self will bring to us what we need for going towards the truth. Yeah, if I have specific kamya karmas, like I say, I want money, I want something, etc., sure, one can do the other things as well. They are not denied or condemned. It's just that this is inclusive of all the other things. What you really need, the real medicine that you need for peace and happiness, you will get that through just meditation on the self, says Bhagavan, which is the greatest of all meditations. All other meditations are included in this. It is for gaining this that the other meditations are prescribed. So if this, meaning meditation on the self, is practiced, the others are not even necessary, said Bhagavan. Knowing oneself is knowing God. Without knowing oneself that meditates, imagining that there is a deity which is different and meditating on that deity is compared by the great ones to the act of measuring with one's foot one's own shadow, and to search for a trivial conch after throwing away a priceless gem that is already in one's possession. So, if you are having a certain flexibility, freedom to meditate on the self, go for it. Okay, go for it if you feel, yes, I feel comfortable doing this Atma Jnanam or Atmanusandhanam. Bhagavan uses different words, reflection on the self, and so on. If you're comfortable, you find depth, you find peace and happiness in doing that, that's a sign it's good. That's a sign you're going in the correct direction. Go for it. You don't have to have self doubts. And if at all, the self doubt can be if we are getting into some sleep, some drowsy state, yeah, sure, you can pull back, maybe open the eyes. That solves all the problems. Whenever there is laya in the practice of Atma Vichara, gently half open the eyes. That's sufficient. You become alert. So if your mind plays a trick and says, no, no, I feel more deep depth when I close my eyes, okay, play that for a while. But if you get into sleep, just half open the eyes. All laya goes away. So this is just by the way. And so therefore, Bhagavan says that the highest meditation is this self meditation, because all the deities that you really are meditating on or feel some love and so on, they are reflections of the awareness itself. They are just concepts, and the highest concepts, no doubt, in that consciousness. They are the noblest, most beautiful concepts in awareness. They are also pre available. It's not that I am really creating those concepts. The meditation on deities is available for all human beings. That is why whenever a devotee practices bhakti, devotion for any Ishta Devata, Bhagavan would always validate that. He would not immediately say, you're just imagining the deity. Why do you want to meditate? He would not say that. He would say this only for those who are very mature. They want to go further. They say, yes, there is some devotion, but there is still some dukkha based on my life, based on other things. Then Bhagavan would say, okay, you have done enough meditation on deities, on mantras, now go forward. For those who have never practiced any meditation on deities, it's not a condemnation. Because sometimes people are prone to say, oh, I practice, self-inquiry. All these meditation on deities is something very inferior. That's not a healthy attitude. It's necessary for many people, and it's even as a stepping stone is never disrespected. You have climbed that and come to maybe self-inquiry, well and good. But there is no mocking of the other stages. They are also important, but I am comfortable with self-inquiry. That's a very healthy attitude. So all those other deities too are just like the shadow of one's own foot. And so I'm measuring them. In other words, I am, consciousness is the reality. The deities are the highest reflection of that. If some of you want to have a little extra idea here, these meditations on deities, Arunachala, Shiva, Vishnu, and so on, are the purest, highest manifestations in the name and form realm of the formless self. The formless self, the very first forms they take on, which are highly sattvika, are the deities. So they are very noble and respect worthy, like our gurus even. And so to that extent, of course, it's noble, but they are still one step short of the self. They are one step like a shadow of the self. That's why Bhagavan is nudging us towards just self inquiry. Don't get disheartened if you feel, oh, self inquiry is difficult. You're still making adequate and right directional progress. That is the assurance of Bhagavan. When you meditate on the self, that's very wonderful. And so Bhagavan then goes on to the 30th question, which we will just read and see a little bit, then we'll discuss more in the next class. In the 30th question, the disciple asks, even though the heart and the Brahmarandra alone are the loci fit for meditation, could one meditate if necessary on the six mystic centers or the adharas? So in much of the Indian culture, it's very holistic. So they have figured out how prana and mind are connected. Whenever I think a thought, the prana in my body changes. And this mediation between the prana and the mind is through chakras, what are called centers of prana in the body. These are called mystic centers or adharas. So whenever you have a powerful emotion of, let's say, anger comes, that is correlated with a lot of energy awakening at what is called the navel center or the Manipuraka chakra, the adhara. Adhara means here the center. And so different emotions, including the pure emotions of love, for example, whenever there is a lot of love for one's guru or for one's child, or even romantic love, for example, any such high emotion temporarily awakens and activates what is known as the Anahata chakra. So these forms of meditation are very clearly understood in the Indian traditions, and they're not false either. It's just that they are stepping stones and they can become diversions. Sometimes a person can get too much hooked, like a trip, into all these chakra business. And so Bhagavan tries to draw the attention to what is really important here. But the chakras are there for the way your emotions, down from the lowest to the highest emotions that you're capable of, which are phenomena of the mind, right? Emotions have to do with the mind, and the body is something physical. Chakras mediate that connection. The highest vrittis, which are emotional vrittis, are expressed in the body through the agency of the chakras. So, for example, when there is a lot of love, the Anahata chakra awakens. It's a very palpable experience. The prana, meaning the breathing, and every single nerve in the body is, as it were, activated in a certain way when the Anahata chakra is awakened, and so on. So these are all wonderful, but not really important. They only have to be not blocking your progress. So since we are on the topic, I'll just mention the main use of these chakras for the one who's following Bhagavan's path is this. They have a certain capacity to block our self-understanding and self-inquiry. To that extent, the blocks there need to be removed. And this practice of self inquiry of Bhagavan is like a master key. Even if I don't know exactly what the blocks are, where my obstacles are, doesn't matter. It's like the master key which will uh, clear every single other block. Why I say this is because the other methods actively, perhaps more elaborately, work on these different blocks in the different chakras. So we need not invalidate all that is mentioned in the tradition, such as the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for example, or in the Gheranda Samhita. So many texts, and even in Upanishads, some of them mention the different chakras. And many of the great Shankaracharyas have also validated the chakra model of mind body connection. But if you practice self inquiry and have made some headway, rest assured all that needs to be done at the chakra level will get taken care. So Bhagavan then answers the six mystical centers or chakras, etc., which are said to be the loci of meditation, are but products of imagination. So ultimately, they are just coming from the mind itself. Okay, the word imagination doesn't mean I am already there, my little mind imagines. No, they are part of the very structure of the mind. The imagination here is the way you might say, even the body is part of your imagination. Okay, it's superimposed on awareness. They are products of imagination. So if I meditate constantly in a certain way, there the awareness plays in a certain way. All these are meant for beginners in yoga. So when there are a lot of obstacles, yeah, sure, these things have a certain place. With reference to meditation on the six centers, the Shiva yogins say there are yogins called the Shiva yogis. They have their own texts. So they have the Rudra Samhita and so on. They all say, the Shiva yogins say, that God, who is of the nature of Advaita or non-dual plenary consciousness, manifests, sustains, and resolves us all. It is a great sin to spoil that reality by superimposing on it various names and forms, such as Ganapati, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Maheshwara, and Sadashiva. So here the Shiva yogins are trying to push you towards, nudge you towards non-duality, saying all the different deities, are one step away from the truth. Why do we want to get too much involved in them? That is the idea. Remember the Adhikari here. The Adhikari is somebody who has accomplished great deal of meditation on these deities. He already has a lot of love and devotion for the deities. It's not for somebody who is shallow and atheistic and kind. His mind is still struggling with so many other kinds of desires related to the sense objects and so on. For them, this statement doesn't really make sense because they don't even care for the deities. Let's say all they care for is money and some pleasures. This doesn't apply to them. So we have to see carefully the ad hominem nature of this statement, meaning the adhikari here is one who's already done a lot of upasana, has done a lot of loving devotion towards the deities. Then the Shiva Yogin's statement is quoted by Bhagavan. Why do you want to defile the self? Why do you want to bring in the self to one step lower and get too much absorbed in these different upasanas? Sri Vidya, so there's a great deal of upasana there. Well, okay, for a while you do have the devotion, practice the various mantras and so on. And then at some point you say, enough. It becomes another mystical trip. More often than not, it becomes another source of an ego. Oh, I have done Sri Vidya Upasana. I am so great and so on. More often than not, that has found to happen. Just observe and you will notice that. And that is why for them, Bhagavan is giving a certain hammering here. He says that it is a great sin to spoil that reality by superimposing all these Namarupas. So this is meant for those people, okay? And then the Vedantins declare all those are but imaginations of the mind. They are just manah kalpitam, just creations of the mind. So in this way, remember the mind here is not just the ordinary small mind. It is mind as in the very source of all the thoughts. Okay, it's the deeper mind. And therefore, if one knows oneself, which is of the nature of consciousness that knows everything, one knows everything. So instead of going into the deities and their worship overly much, let us just step back and relax as awareness. Easier to do that sometimes than doing all the elaborate upasanas. That is the accessibility of Vedanta, accessibility of Bhagavan's direct teaching. That it is more difficult to do many of the upasanas than self-inquiry. And so Bhagavan is trying to bring us to that. If we who are endowed, so when that one is known, then all that has not been known becomes known. Yena vijnanena sarvamidam vijnatam syat, says the Upanishad. That knowing which everything else is as good as known. Okay, you lose interest, you don't care. You don't care for the details. So if I have tasted the sweet, one sweet, I know what are all the other sweets. I don't need to go for another sweets for the sake of knowing its taste. It's the same thing. Even so, is this consciousness knowledge. And then Bhagavan says, if we who are endowed with various thoughts meditate on God, that is the self, we would get rid of the plurality of thoughts by that one thought. And then even that one thought would vanish. This is what is meant by the saying that knowing oneself is knowing God. This knowledge is release. Jnana devatu kaivalyam. Jnana hride jnananda muktihi. So knowledge liberates you from sorrow. Liberation, remember, when you think of the word mukti, always notice it is mukti from distress, mukti from sorrow. We really don't care for mukti from birth and rebirth. We see that there is sorrow in that. We want freedom from that sorrow. If someone is given a deal, do you want freedom from birth and rebirth? Or do you want freedom from the sorrow of the birth and rebirth? The person is really careful and thinks he wants freedom from the sorrow. Birth and rebirth are just like a show, let them go on. Jnanis don't even care. Let the body stay or let it drop. They don't have this craving for ending the body, so to speak. Anyway, so therefore, that is mukti, freedom from distress and sorrow. And so Bhagavan says that meditating on the self is meditating on God, because when we meditate even on the deities, it's like a stepping stone. Sometimes all the other thoughts get converged in that one thought. In a very powerful incident in Sri Ramakrishna's life, he was such a great upasaka of Bhavatarini Kali Mata. And his accomplishment was this, what Bhagavan here only says. He says that, Sri Ramakrishna says that, the moment I close my eyes, the entire world goes away. No past, no future, no others. Everything just resolves as just Mother Kali. Remember, he's not saying, I am here sitting down, meditating on this Kali and the world is out there. No, there's no world for Sri Ramakrishna. He says, I am, Kali is. Done. That is the acme, the last point of Upasana. So he was already there. He was already able to resolve, do a pravilapanam of all that exists in the Ishtadevata. Wonderful. That's a great accomplishment. And then that very Ishtadevata, Mother Kali, brings the Advaita Guru, Totapuri. And he teaches Sri Ramakrishna Advaitam. Says, go beyond even that form of Kali. He uses some very tough love tactics there. He says, cut through that image of Kali. Just mercilessly get out of that form. He says, how can I do that? He says, no, do it. So because he already had surrendered to that Guru, he was able to take refuge in that teaching of non-duality and overcome that form obsession even. So that's his beautiful story there, which is what Bhagavan says here, that if we are endowed with various thoughts, meditate on God, that is the self, we would get rid of the plurality of thoughts by one thought. So the one thought will get rid of the plurality of the thoughts, be it deity Kali or be it even whatever we say the self, whatever it is, there's a use of a thought to get rid of the other thoughts. Then even that one thought will vanish, because residing or being oneself is not another thought. It is not dependent on thinking some thought. So this is the beautiful journey that each one is going through willy-nilly, whether we like it or not. We are on this journey. It's our job to stop resisting the grace of the gurus. They are always, as it were, available. Their very words, we just dwell on them. Slowly, it sinks in. Like I said, each strand in your life, in your thinking, slowly we align it with the teaching of the guru. That's what we are asked to do. Then the magic happens. With this, we will conclude today's session. And if any any questions are there, kindly share them on YouTube, or you could ask them live. Otherwise, we will end the session.
Namo Ramana sir, there is one question on YouTube. I shall now share that with you. The question is from R. Sindhu. Quote, Namo Ramana, I have been oscillating between self-abidance and mind with old tendencies. It seems that remaining as self is difficult. Please guide me on surrendering to self totally. Unquote.
Yes, the very fact that you are able to frame a question like that goes to your credit. You are able to see that there is self-abidance, and then we get distracted and involved in the other thoughts. So there, what I would say is you can follow one of two methods. One is you can initially get in and observe a certain pattern in the thoughts. Is it any specific object or thought or topic you are worrying about constantly? Well, then we say Vishayeshu Dosha Darshanam. So see the fallacies in your thinking with respect to those thought activities. Generally, those thoughts are not the distracting thoughts, are not just thoughts of trees and mountains and so on. They are not the thoughts which create the problem for us. They generally have to do with something in which there is some emotional investment. So there it is good, not even during meditation, even at other times, carefully dwell on the reason for your mind's preoccupation with certain, let's say, topics, priorities, which maybe a part of you says, I need not really, waste so much mental and physical energy on those topics or thoughts or priorities. So that is called Vishayeshu Dosha Darshanam. You see the defect in those particular thoughts and activities. You weaken, therefore, the mind's habitual tendency to get into that. And then again, in the seat of meditation, you, of course, can do the second method, which is be indifferent. Do not worry about the content of those thoughts in meditation. You do that later or before. So, like what I said, the earlier first method. So, look at those thoughts, investigate why are they bothering me, and be merciless in trying to see the fallacies in those thoughts. That's before or after your meditation. In meditation, do not do too much analysis. Maybe just as the thoughts come, just dismiss it. This thought is irrelevant. This topic has no sense. Just again turn back your attention to the self, what you are called as self-abidance. So that if you're able to do, perfect. Otherwise, the stepping stone is always available. In moving from thoughts to self-abidance, the use of the Guru Mantra. Any of the Guru Mantras you can use. Chant them, even Om. If no other mantra is there, just chant Om with gaps. So chant Om elongated and then with a gap. Or use a mantra. That's an intermediate step. So these three methods you can use, two main methods, but even the mantra as a stepping stone, you can include that. So yeah, I hope you understood that. Before and after meditation, dwell carefully on why your mind is getting into other thinking patterns. Use your discrimination, your cognitive capacity to get rid of those harmful or counterproductive thinking patterns. And then in meditation, use mantra. Because when you use mantra, the mind's tendency to get absorbed in these unproductive neurotic thinking automatically reduces. It's magical. For one who has not explored mantra, I would heartily recommend that. Explore the Guru mantra. You can chant Om, you can chant Om Namah Shivaya, Arunachala Shiva, Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. These three mantras, I would say, are universally accessible. You can use that Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, all the traditional mantras. Helpful to do that because millions of devotees have chanted those mantras. So their blessings are available. And what happens then? The mind's neurotic thinking patterns get, as it were, like a vacuum cleaner. The mantra just absorbs all those thoughts. Imagine the mantra like that, like a vacuum cleaner, just brushes all those thoughts. Little more thoughts come. Sometimes when your mantra chanting happens for a while, some more fresh layer of thoughts come. Don't despair. You continue with mantra for a while. Then two things can happen. You will get some periods of lucidity when your mind is in self-abidance. Well, that's good for you. Stay with that. Just don't do anything. Sakashayam vijaniya samapraptam na chalagi, says Gaudapada in Mandukya. So at that point, if those moments of lucidity happen and the mantra is also no longer required, just stop, stay there. Okay? Sakashayam vijaniya, sakashayam vijaniya samapraptam na chal. Samapraptam means when the mind is having that self-abidance, na chalayet. You don't have to do anything there. You just staying there itself is a sadhana there. And like I said, so try any of these methods and it will definitely help you. It's very good that you're practicing Bhagavan's methods. Definitely, Bhagavan will bless those who practice his method. Okay, ji. So if no more questions, we will end with the Shanti Mantra.
So we do have one more question. The question is from Pallavi Sinhaji. Quote, Namo Ramana, I was in doubt of worshipping deities and sadhana. It should be balanced as grihast or sadhana is enough. Please guide. Unquote.
Can you repeat the last sentence? It should be balanced.
It should be just a moment. Yeah, it should be balanced as grihast or sadhana is enough. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. It should be okay. I'll repeat your question and see if it's correct. So there are these two methods mentioned of worshipping the deities, which seems to be more like a grihastha kind of a practice, and there is something like a sadhana, which seems to be not even part of any role as a grihastha, but something deeper. You can call it self-inquiry or the practice of atma vichara and so on. It seems to be like a higher thing. You use the word sadhana for that, and then other roles as a grihastha, you have the deity worship and so on. So should we balance both of them? Yeah, for sure. Where you are right now, move from there. I would say that as long as you have many roles to play, do not abruptly shut down all your other practices of the deity worship. There's a story told of Sri Bhagavan saying that there was a Ramanatha Brahmachari. So maybe some of you know the story. Bhagavan once saw him doing the Pitrakarma. His father was no more, and he was doing the Shraddha and the offering of the sesame seeds and so on. That's a simple procedure. Even someone like without any money and so on, with very minimal ingredients, with the mantras, a person can do that. So Ramanatha Brahmachari, a person very devoted, a very noble devotee, 100% surrendered to Bhagavan, living in utter austerity, living in the caves and taking alms from the street. Such a person was practicing this karma. It involves deities and the various devatas, pitras, and so on. Pitras means departed ancestors. Bhagavan comes and says, "Are you still doing that? You don't have to do that anymore." And says Ramanatha Brahmachari, after that I stopped doing that. Bhagavan, my guru, has assured, drop it, you're no longer having to do that. Now, there was another man, a grihastha, who saw this incident and he felt presumably a little lazy and disinclined to do all of that. And he also stopped doing it. And Bhagavan saw that and says, that's not meant for you. And when he comes to Bhagavan and quotes this, he says, no, that teaching was meant for Ramanatha Brahmachari, not for you. You should do your Nitya Karmas. These are minimum things. They are not like occupying you throughout the day. They are hardly occupying 15-20 minutes. The Devata worship, Devata Aradhana, in this case, the Shraddha Karma, you should do that. And then you parallelly pursue the other Atma Vichara or the sadhana as well. So that teaching is more relevant for most of us. So you keep doing the Devata Aradhana, the worship of the deities, and practice the Atma Vichara for a long time. And then as the surrender happens, you know the kind of benchmark by looking at Ramanatha Brahmachari. Utterly surrendered, he let go of any money earning, living on alms. Yep, then they're ready for 100% letting go of the Devata Aradhana. Until then, some connect with the deities slash guru. Remember, deities and guru are on the same platform. So some kind of a connect with the guru, with the personality of the guru, or with some mantra form is very precious. We need it prematurely dump those very important practices. But at some point, sure, the letting go of these practices will happen as well. Gambhiram Seshaya, these are all stalwarts who were at a point where they could comfortably let go of them. So, sure, that is also there. So, for now, when in doubt, continue both. At some point, you will not have a shadow of doubt. You will feel, I love and respect all the deities, and yet I choose to meditate on the self. Then you let go. So we will end today's session with the Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
கருணாருணமணி கிரணாவலி நிகர் தரும் அக்ஷரமகள் மாலை திருநாடிய திரு அடியார் திருமால எளிய பரபுதல் பொருளாக கருணாகரமுனி ரமணாரியன் உவகையினார் சுழியழுகதியாக அருணாச்சலமென அகமே அறிவுடும் ஆழ்வார் சிவனுலகாழ்வாரே அருணாச்சலவரக்கேற்ற அக்ஷரமணமாலை சாட்ட கருணாகர கணபதியே கரமருளிக் காப்பாயே அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல 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 அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சல அழகு சுந்தரம் போல் அகமும் நீயும் உற்று அபின்னமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அகம்பூந்தீட்டுன் அகமுகை சிறையாய் அமர்வித்ததன்குள் அருணாச்சல ஆருக்காயனை ஆண்டனை அகற்றில் அகிலம் பழித்திடும் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல இப்படிதப்புனை ஏன் நினைப்பித்தாய் இனி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல உனையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுலத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சல பூசூத்துளம்பிடார் உனை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல என்னை அழித்திப்போர் என்னை கலவாவினில் இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சல ஏன் இந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறழ்கிழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஐம்புல கள்வ அகத்தினில் புகும்போர் அகத்தினில் இளையோ அருணாச்சல ஒருவனமுன்னை ஒளிக்கேவர் வருவார் உன் சூவே இது அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல ஓங்கார பொருள் ஒப்புயரில்லோய் உனையாரறிவார் அருணாச்சல ஓவை போல் எனக்குள் அருளை தந்தனை ஆளுவதும் கடன் அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமணமாலி வாழி. தேவ सोमो वा ईदस्य राज्यमासुध्ये यो राजासन् राज्यो वा राजनं सन्दर्शयामि चर्चान् धारयामि सब लोग हाथ पर जोड़ेंगे हाथ धोने के लिए योपामुष्पं वेद पुष्पवान् प्रजावान् पशुमान् भवति चन्द्रमा वां पुष्पं पुष्पवान् प्रजावान् पशुमान् भवति एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति यानि यानि च पापानि जन्मान्तर्गतानि च तानि तानि विनश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणपदे पदे न कर्मणा प्रजया धनेन कायेनैके अमृतत्वमानशः परेण नामं विहितं गुहायां विभ्राजते सद्यो विशन्ति वेदान्तविज्ञानसमुच्यतार्था सन्न्यासयोगात् यतशुद्धसत्त्वाः हे ब्रह्मलोके त्वरान्तकाले परामृतात् परिमुच्यन्ति सर्वे चक्रं विभागं परमेश्वमूलं यत्पुण्डरीकं पुरमध्यसर्गस्थं तत्रावसक्नं विदनं विलोह तस्मिन् यदण्डस्तदुपासितव्यं यो वेदातोऽस्वरप्रोक्तो वेदान्तेय प्रतिष्ठितः तस्य प्रकृतिलीनस्य यत्परस्य महेश्वरः वेदोक्तं पुष्पाणि समर्पयामि सुवर्णपुष्पं समर्पयामि
Namo Ramana. This brings us to the closure of today's Sunday Satsang with Raghavji. We shall reconvene with him